Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. As you can tell, I have a new addition here, my new baby. So this has been keeping me quite occupied these days. However, I am so happy to finally be bringing you another video. This video was inspired due to the fact that I have seen clips of my older content in Tradwife commentary videos, and I wanted to say something about it several weeks ago. However, since I was in the third trimester, almost having this baby, I didn't quite feel up to tackle the controversy, I guess you could say. Before I get into the meat and bones of the actual video, I wanted to encourage you to subscribe if you happen to stumble upon this due to the popularity, the rise in frequency of people talking about tradwives. My goal is to kind of dispel some of the myths here, not necessarily to convince the people who are very opposed, because this is kind of like a situation where people thinking that the sky is green but the sky is actually blue, but if they are hard pressed on proving that the sky is green, no matter what you say to prove that the sky is blue, they're not going to change their mind. Rather, it is for the people who are intrigued by this lifestyle, who are open to learning about different ways of living, and for those of you who have been discouraged in using the term traditional wife because you think it's associated with some sort of hate, when it really is just a group of two words that describe an adjective for what we actually do beyond simply just being a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home wife. So let's get into the first myth and the presumption that I hear a lot, which is that our husbands are making us do this or be this type of traditional way. And what I have to say is that, of course, having a preference or a type of person that you want to marry is valid. There are men out there who want to have a wife who stays home and raises kids, for example. But on this channel, we talk a lot about femininity and masculinity, and that isn't for the purpose of stereotyping the traditional wife as an uber feminine woman. This is simply due to the fact that when you are in a relationship with a masculine man, he wants you to live your freest self, to be in the state of softness where you don't feel as though it is you against the world. And I've talked a lot about this with reference to my husband. We met when I was in university. Not once did he push this particular lifestyle on me. He just always encouraged me to do things that made me the happiest, that made me feel the most creative. When I look at the traditional wife, I look at one of my grandmas who lived her life sequentially, which is what I talk a lot about with regards to the myth of having it all on this channel. My grandpa was a masculine man, and he wanted my grandma to live her happiest lifestyle, but she didn't have the societal pressure of necessarily having it all, so she was able to raise her 4 kids and then pursue her dream of owning a boutique. Which leads me into my second point. People believe that we are against women working. Like I mentioned, the example of my grandma, it used to be recognized that there's only so much that a person can take. Being a stay-at-home mom, for example, is a full-time job. Oh, see, she's a full-time job. And it is actually the hardest job that I have ever had. I've had people criticize me about not having real jobs in the past, which is actually false. I've had several real jobs with coworkers that have kids, mortgages, car payments, etc. But I digress. The problem that many of us in the traditional space have with modern culture is that it assumes the best way for a woman to be is to have it all. It almost gaslights a woman into thinking that she is not worthy if she doesn't do it all. It also sets up many men to expect their wives to do it all, which leads to burnout and broken families. That is a topic for a totally different day, but there are many men nowadays who gloat in the fact that their wives do everything, almost as if they are some sort of workhorse mule, and that is definitely the type of man that we are not going after in this space and that we should not be glorifying, but for some reason this has become more common. Which leads me back to a tangent on the previous point. Your man is not going to want you to feel burnt out if he is truly a masculine man. This doesn't mean that he will expect you to stay home, but for many of us, when we tap into our feminine spirit, we feel joy-filled at home. Like I said, being a stay-at-home mom is the hardest job I've ever had. It's very tedious. You know, I have both kids right now, kind of making a ruckus, so it's hard for me to do this. I'm feeding my toddler berries, just to give you an example of how chaotic it is. But despite being tired, there's something about it that lets me live in feminine flow and gives me the freedom to express qualities such as nurturing and creativity that fill my spirit, rather than being burnt out and not having the time to tend to my home and my kids because I'm trying to do it all. So discussing women who are working, I do know several women who do it all and who thrive on doing it all. But the problem, like I mentioned, is not that those women shouldn't be applauded or recognized. The issue is that it has become the norm. And for 95% of women, it is not possible. This doesn't make you less worthy. This is just recognizing that the normal shouldn't necessarily be qualified by the outliers. But we have so many women who feel as though in order to be a true woman in today's modern society, they have to do that. And we have this rise in the Tradwife movement because we see older millennials as well as Gen Z who have lived and watched their mothers become burnt out, living off of Zoloft. Some of us who have had mothers who have become chronically ill due to it, myself. And of course, there's the Tradwife aesthetic, but it doesn't necessarily look the same way for every woman. I think what we just see in the media nowadays is people kind of taking clips of certain subsets of women within the movement and trying to depict that we are all like this, even though many of us have different personalities, different ethnic backgrounds, etc., etc. Which leads me into my next point, that the Tradwife movement, becoming a traditional wife, is just only reserved for white women, and it's associated with some sort of a negative political agenda. No matter what, in every single movement, you are going to have a few crazy apples, a few bad apples. There are many people who come on here defending other types of movement, saying that we can't qualify it based on a couple of radical people. So I'm going to use the same logic and tell you that you can't get the full picture of the large majority of who is in this movement by only selecting a few people and nitpicking what you think that they are. But there is something that I want to say with regards to the factor of privilege in being able to live a more traditional lifestyle, which is something I want to talk about in my future videos. But that is the concept that ever since even 2019, when I started making videos, it has become harder and harder to live this way. I've talked about the economic barriers, but I also do want to say that we see a tendency of people to be on one spectrum of the political sphere when we talk about the traditional families, traditional wife movement, because there are so many barriers that have been put in place with the caveat of helping people that have made it harder for us to actually have that choice. And I am a woman who believes that you should have the choice whether you want a career or you should stay home. But speaking as a Canadian, ever since 2015, 2016, we have seen the opportunities taken away from women, such as increased taxation, taking away income splitting, providing subsidized daycare, but no benefits, and making it harder and more expensive for women who use non-traditional childcare, such as being the childcare or hiring nannies, which is why traditional wives and business owner women would get along, because we do want the freedom to be able to live out our dreams without barriers that hold us back financially. So as you can tell, things are getting a little bit rowdy around here. I'm going to end the video there. I would love you to leave a comment down below, talk about some myths that you have come to acknowledge regarding the traditional wife movement. What do you have to say to add to this conversation? As long as it's respectful, any type of dialogue is welcome here. I think that we're not going to be able to make a difference if we don't talk about it here. Don't forget to hit the like button. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.